Who has the best handheld game console of all time? I'm going to tell you right after this. Hello everyone and welcome to another 10 Reasons Why Show Tech with me, Scott Tomasso. It's the show that highlights the day's hottest tech for you, the layman. Now, of course, we all know about the console wars, Xbox versus Sony and Nintendo versus, well, themselves. But the handheld game consoles is also a pretty tough market. So which one is better? Well, you can't really tell with just sales. However, that's what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you the top 10 most sold handheld game consoles of all time. Ready? Here we go. It's going to be starting with number 10. Now, I'm not even sure that anybody's going to remember that this was actually out, but the Neo Geo Pocket is one of the highest sold devices of all time. Now, we all love Neo Geo. I used to play the arcade all the time, and I have to admit, I've never played with the Neo Geo Pocket, but, you know, I would. Coming in at number 9 is the N-Gage. Yes, that N-Gage. So while this thing was mired in all kinds of complications, the sheer use of it, probably the most obvious, this still managed to sell over 3 million units. And my guess is it's probably the only time Nokia is going to give this a shot. But hey, number 9. Coming in at number 8 is the WonderSwan. Does anybody know what that is? Okay, while I can't really comment on the playability of WonderSwan, this has done enough to come in at number 8, and in fact, this thing has sold over 3.5 million units. This little handheld came out in 1999, and apparently there's still people out there playing with this thing. I'd love to see one. Coming in at number 7 is the PlayStation Vita. Now, this is the latest and greatest handheld console from Sony, and it's hard to believe it's been 3 years already. I feel like this thing just came out. But it has sold over 4 million units, and this thing still is going up and up. Now, coming in at number 6 is Sega Game Gear. This little powerhouse came out in 1990 and sold over 11 million units. Now, this is an 8-bit handheld console that shares much of its hardware with the Sega Master System. And of course, it's able to play its own games, but you can also play the Master System games through an adapter. So that was kind of cool about this little thing. I didn't have one, but I do remember wanting one, and apparently a lot of you wanted it too. Coming in at number 5 is the Nintendo 3DS. Of course, Nintendo has mastered the portable consoles, and 3DS is no exception. This came out in 2011. It sold over 43 million units, and as the name suggests, it's in 3D. Now, you don't need to use 3D glasses with this, which is really the selling point. It actually shows it in 3D. And it was also backwards compatible with Nintendo DS. So it's a win-win for everybody, really. Coming in at number 4 is the PlayStation Portable, or the PSP. Now, this one really made a splash back in 2004. This was Sony's coming out party of sorts for the handheld consoles, and the PSP really delivered. In fact, they delivered about 80 million of these things to people across the world. And I have to admit, I had a PSP. There's something about playing those little discs, little movies, stuff like that. Yeah, it's a great handheld console. I mean, what are you gonna say? PSP, number 4. And that brings us to number 3. The Game Boy Advance. This is, of course, Nintendo. This little juggernaut came out in 2001 and has sold over 81 million units. It was a whopping 32-bit handheld console and pretty much kicked everybody's ass that tried to take their share of the market. Now that brings us to number 2, and not a surprise, the Nintendo Game Boy. The original Game Boy. Now, if you can imagine, back in 1989 when this thing came out, I actually have one. I still have it. Black and white. Cartridges go in. This one sold nearly 120 million units, which is crazy. Now, that does include numbers for the color version as well. However, Game Boy is Game Boy, and you're not going to fight against Game Boy. Well, you could, but you're probably going to lose. And just about everybody did. So that brings us to number 1. What's the only handheld console that could beat the Game Boy, the original Game Boy? Well, of course, it's got to be Nintendo, of course. And if you haven't guessed it already, it's the Nintendo DS. Now, this wasn't even a contest. This thing has sold way more than any other handheld portable ever. I mean, by a long shot. This came out in 2004, and it sold nearly 154 million units. And what really set this one apart was that this was a dual screen. You want to know what the DS means? Dual screen. Or some may actually call it developer system. Either way, it was the first time you had 2 screens games working in tandem on a portable device. Not unlike the Wii U that's out now, really. And to give you kind of an understanding of how popular and how big this Nintendo DS was, there is actually only one console, and we're talking home consoles, that has sold more units than a Nintendo DS, and that's the PlayStation 2, which just eked it out by just a couple of million units. So kudos to Nintendo DS, our #1 top-selling handheld console of all time. So that's the list. There's no fighting. Numbers don't lie. Nintendo DS is far and away the most popular handheld console. But I'd still like to hear from you guys. What's your favorite handheld console? Is it the Nintendo DS? Do you have something else? Which one did you really like? And which one were you most surprised about? Leave us a comment. Come and subscribe to our channel, of course. And if you want to see other cool videos, just come to our website at www.10reasonswhyshow.com. Until next time, I'm Scott Tomasso. Now go tech yourself before you wreck yourself. Hello everyone, and thanks again for watching the video. Go ahead and hit subscribe below. If you're one of those people that loves to listen on the go, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Just click the link below. In the meantime, check out some of our sample videos. Just click on them and it'll take you right there. And we thank you again for checking us out. Click it. Go on, click it.